What if time wasn't just something we measure, but something kings fought to control? Picture a world where the ticking of a clock could decide the fate of empires, where rulers didn't just battle for gold or territory, but for the power to bend time itself to their will. This isn't science fiction. It's a hidden chapter of history, a story of rival monarchs who believed that mastering time was the key to shaping destiny. From ancient astronomers whispering prophecies to kings manipulating calendars to extend their reigns, this was a war waged not with swords, but with the stars, the seasons, and the very rhythms of the earth. Think about it, time is the one force no one can escape. Yet, these rulers dared to try. They built monuments aligned with solstices, crafted calendars to legitimize their rule, and even declared certain years non-existent to erase their rivals' triumphs. Their obsession wasn't just about power, it was about immortality. To control time was to cheat death, to leave a mark so indelible that history itself would remember them as gods. And in their rivalry, they left behind clues, stone circles, cryptic texts, and celestial maps, that whisper of a struggle far stranger than any ordinary war. Today, we take time for granted. We check our phones, schedule our days, and rarely stop to wonder who decided how we measure it, but the legacy of these kings is all around us. The way we mark the years, the holidays we celebrate, even the way we think about the future, it's all rooted in their ancient battle. So let's step into their world where time was a prize worth killing for and uncover the secrets they left behind. This is more than history. It's a tale of human ambition so vast it sought to conquer the one thing no one can own. And by the end, you'll never look at a clock the same way again. The first civilizations didn't just observe time, they worshipped it. When the Nile's floodwaters rose each year, the ancient Egyptians saw not coincidence but the hand of the gods, a celestial rhythm their pharaohs claimed to command. These rulers didn't invent timekeeping, they weaponized it by aligning their pyramids with the dog star Sirius, whose rising signaled the floods. They transformed astronomy into propaganda. The message was clear: only through the pharaoh could the seasons turn, the crops grow, the kingdom thrive. Half a world away in Babylon, stargazing took a darker turn. Here, priests tracked the moon not just to predict eclipses, but to issue warnings a celestial omen could postpone battles or depose kings. The famous Code of Hammurabi, etched in stone, didn't just list laws, it tied justice to the movements of the stars. To challenge the calendar was to challenge the king's divine right to rule, and when rebellions arose, the Babylonians had a brutal solution. They simply erased months from the record, pretending entire seasons never happened. Time itself became a tool to rewrite history. Meanwhile, in ancient China, emperors guarded their astronomical secrets like state secrets. The Shang dynasty's oracle bones reveal a chilling truth. Rulers consulted the heavens not just for harvests, but for executions. A misaligned calendar could mean failed crops, or worse, the loss of the mandate of heaven, the cosmic permission slip to rule. So when dynasties fell, the first act of the new emperor was always the same: declare a new calendar, resetting time itself in his image. What united these distant empires was a realization more powerful than any army. Whoever controlled the clock controlled the narrative of power. The stars might be fixed, but their interpretation. That was a throne worth killing for. And as we'll soon discover, this celestial chess game was only beginning. In the fertile lands between the Tigris and Euphrates, where civilization first took root, timekeeping became the ultimate weapon of control. The battle between and Lagash wasn't fought with spears and chariots, but with clay tablets and celestial observations. Each city-state's priests guarded their astronomical knowledge like military secrets. knowing that whoever set the calendar controlled everything, from when farmers planted crops to when taxes were due. The lunar calendar, favored by Ur's rulers, tied power to the moon's phases, creating a rhythm that required constant priestly intervention to keep aligned with the seasons. Meanwhile, Lagash's solar reckoning claimed to follow the unshakable logic of the sun, a system that needed no human tinkering. This conflict ran deeper than mere mathematics. When the king of Ur declared his calendar the official measure of time, he wasn't just organizing his kingdom, he was rewriting reality itself. Festivals suddenly fell on different days, contracts had to be renegotiated, and even the gods' feast days shifted. To reject the royal calendar was tantamount to treason, because in Mesopotamia, time wasn't neutral. It was a divine gift bestowed upon kings, and to challenge it was to challenge the cosmic order. The scribes of these city-states became unlikely warriors in this temporal Cold War. Their cuneiform tablets didn't just record business transactions, they encoded entire worldviews. A single stroke could determine whether a month had 29 or 30 days, subtly favoring one system over another. Archaeologists have found evidence of competing date systems used simultaneously in border regions, proving that common citizens often lived in two timelines at once, caught between rival claims to truth. Most chilling of all was what happened when a new ruler took power. Victorious kings would literally erase years from existence, declaring entire periods of their enemies' reigns as non-time. Imagine conquering not just land but memory itself, making your rivals vanish from history as if they'd never existed. This practice would echo through millennia, appearing in cultures from Rome to the Maya, proving that controlling time wasn't about clocks, it was about controlling whose story got told. What began as a technical disagreement between neighboring cities became humanity's first lesson in how power shapes reality. These ancient time wars show us that calendars were never just tools, they were weapons, and the battlefield was human consciousness itself. The victors didn't just rewrite history, they reshaped how people experienced every sunrise, every harvest, every moment of their lives. And as we'll see next, this Mesopotamian conflict was just the opening move in a game that would span continents and centuries. The pyramids of Egypt weren't just tombs, they were cosmic clocks in stone, built with such precision that their corridors aligned with the stars on the very night the pharaoh's soul was said to ascend to the heavens. This wasn't architecture, it was alchemy, transforming mortal rulers into eternal gods through the silent language of astronomy. The key to their power lay in the Nile's annual flood, an event so regular it might seem like nature's rhythm, but to the Egyptians it was proof their pharaohs commanded the universe itself. When the dog star Sirius rose just before dawn, signaling the flood's arrival, it wasn't mere coincidence. It was divinity made visible, a celestial contract between king and cosmos. But this system had a flaw. The Egyptian calendar drifted. Their year was exactly 365 days, no leap years, no corrections. Over centuries, the seasons slowly slid out of alignment with their calendar, threatening the pharaoh's greatest claim, that he alone maintained cosmic order. So when a rival dynasty from Thebes seized power, they didn't just change rulers, they changed time itself. The new pharaohs declared a calendar reform, slicing days from certain years like a surgeon excising a rival's memory. Overnight, festivals honoring previous kings suddenly fell on non-existent dates, their celebrations erased as thoroughly as if chiseled from temple walls. The priesthood of Ammon took this further, embedding their solar calendar into the very fabric of Thebes. At Karnak Temple, sunlight pierces the inner sanctuary only on the summer solstice, illuminating statues of the gods in a golden declaration. Time itself bowed to Theban rule. Meanwhile, in Memphis, ousted priests whispered that the old calendar still held truth, secretly tracking the real dates of festivals in hidden scrolls. For generations, Egypt lived with two parallel timelines, one sanctioned by the throne, the other preserved in shadows until the conflict erupted into full-scale temple wars, with rival astronomers battling not with weapons, but with competing eclipse predictions. What makes this struggle so revealing is how it exposes timekeeping as the ultimate propaganda. When the pharaoh reset the calendar, he wasn't just correcting math, he was rewriting history, ensuring future generations would measure eternity by his yardstick. The pyramids may have been built to last, but the Theban rulers proved something more profound. That time isn't found in the stars, but in the hands of those bold enough to redefine it. And as we'll soon see, this Egyptian lesson wouldn't stay buried in the sands. In ancient China, the stars weren't just points of light, they were the emperor's report card. The mandate of heaven hinged on something far more precise than battlefield victories or tax revenues, the ability to keep the celestial clockwork ticking. When the Zhou dynasty rose to power, they didn't just conquer territory, they conquered time itself, declaring their calendar the only true measure of the seasons. Their secret weapon, a carefully cultivated myth that only the emperor's court could read the heavens. Court astrologers became the gatekeepers of power, whispering predictions that determined when to plant crops, when to wage war, even when to hold weddings. A single miscalculation could unravel it all, but the real genius of this system was its brutality. The Zhou didn't just punish those who challenged their calendar, they erased them from history. Rebel astronomers found their observations scratched from bamboo scrolls, their names stricken from records as if they'd never existed. The message was clear: time belonged to the throne, and to disagree was to vanish. That is, until the Warring States period, when rival kingdoms like Kai and Chu began training their own stargazers. Suddenly, farmers at the border faced conflicting planting schedules, merchants argued over which new moon marked the month start, and soldiers found themselves celebrating festivals on different days depending which kingdom's fortress they stood in. The most explosive conflict came in 261 BC, when the Qin kingdom deliberately shifted their calendar by a month to spite the Zhou. Overnight, harvest taxes came due weeks early, throwing entire provinces into chaos. But this wasn't just bureaucratic sabotage, it was psychological warfare. By tampering with time, Qin wasn't just challenging the emperor's authority, they were proving he'd lost the heavens' favor. When the Zhou failed to predict a solar eclipse 3 years later, rebellions erupted like clockwork. What's chilling is how modern this ancient struggle feels. The Zhou's downfall came not from swords, but from something far subtler: the democratization of knowledge. As rival courts built their own observatories and trained their own astronomers, the monopoly on timekeeping crumbled. The lesson written in those star charts still echoes today: control how people measure their lives, and you control far more than clocks. You hold the very rhythm of their existence in your hands. And as we'll see next, this battle wouldn't stay confined to China. Deep in the emerald heart of the Maya world, time wasn't measured, it was worshipped. While other empires tracked years or decades, Maya scribes calculated cosmic cycles so vast they stretched beyond human comprehension. Their long count calendar didn't just mark days, it mapped destiny itself, with rulers boasting they could converse directly with the gods who governed time's flow. At Kapon, King 18 Rabbit erected stelae carved with dates reaching millions of years into the past, a bold declaration that his reign wasn't just part of history, but woven into the fabric of eternity. Yet this mastery came at a price. When drought parched the land and crops failed, the people didn't blame the weather, they turned on their timekeepers. The sacred 260-day Tzolk'in calendar dictated everything from planting seasons to coronation dates, so when predictions failed, kings faced rebellions that toppled entire dynasties. The city of Tikal exploited this ruthlessly. After defeating rival Calakmul in battle, they didn't just burn its temples, they systematically defaced every calendar inscription, chiseling away their enemies' claim to divine timing. The most chilling evidence comes from Dos Pilas, where archaeologists found a royal tomb sealed beneath a pyramid's steps not as honor, but as punishment. Inscriptions reveal the disgraced king had miscalculated a Venus cycle, causing a festival to fall on the wrong day. His people didn't just execute him, they buried his corpse facing west, ensuring his soul would forever chase the setting sun, never catching the dawn of a new era. What ultimately unraveled Maya civilization might not have been war or famine, but something far more profound, a crisis of faith in time itself. As droughts worsened and predictions failed, competing city-states began resetting their calendars in desperate attempts to regain cosmic favor. Farmers found themselves harvesting by one city's count while paying taxes by another's. The harmony between earth and sky, the very foundation of Maya belief, shattered into competing timelines until finally the people stopped looking to the stars altogether. The lesson written in those crumbling observatories still haunts us. The Maya didn't collapse because they lost control of their land or their armies. They fell because they lost control of the story, the narrative of time that bound their world together. And in that silence, the jungle reclaimed not just their cities, but their very understanding of when and why they existed. Rome's early calendar was less a system than a political free-for-all, where time bent to the will of those in power. Imagine a world where the high priest, the Pontifex Maximus, could magically add extra days to a year, stretching out a favored politician's term or postponing an inconvenient election. Months dragged on or vanished entirely. Winters sometimes arrived in what was supposed to be autumn, and farmers never knew when to plant. Chaos wasn't just a side effect, it was the point. The ruling class treated time like clay, molding it to crush rivals and reward allies. Then came Julius Caesar, fresh from conquering Gaul, with an audacious plan to tame time itself. His Julian calendar wasn't just about accuracy, it was a masterpiece of political theater. By aligning Rome with the solar year, Caesar didn't merely fix a broken system. He declared himself its architect, a mortal who'd outmaneuvered the gods. The calendar's centerpiece, the month Quintilis, renamed July in his honor. Overnight, Caesar's name was etched into every contract, every festival, every citizen's daily life. But his assassins on the Ides of March understood the deeper threat. By stabbing Caesar, they weren't just killing a man, they were attacking his legacy in the stars. The conspirators tried to revert to the old calendar, to erase his reforms like scratches on a wax tablet. What followed was a war of timekeeping where dates became battle lines. Mark Antony, clutching Caesar's blood-stained toga, didn't just demand vengeance, he insisted the Julian calendar remain untouched, turning each passing day into a memorial to his fallen patron. The real twist, Caesar's time coup outlived him by millennia. When his heir Augustus took power, he doubled down, renaming Sextilis as August, and fiddling with its length just to ensure his month wouldn't play second fiddle to July. Even the Catholic Church's later Gregorian reform kept the Julian framework intact, proving Caesar had won the ultimate victory, shaping how billions of people, centuries later, would still mark their lives. His assassins failed to grasp one truth: murder a man and he becomes a martyr, but steal his calendar and you rewrite eternity. The tolling of monastery bells didn't just mark the hours, it shaped reality itself across medieval Europe. Every plow struck earth, every market opened, every marriage was solemnized according to the Church's sacred chronology. The liturgical calendar wasn't merely a schedule, it was a celestial dictatorship with feast days and fasts woven so tightly into daily life that to question them was to risk one's soul. Easter, the most carefully calculated date of all, became the ultimate test of obedience. The Vatican's mathematicians spent years perfecting its timing, tying Christ's resurrection to the spring equinox in a formula so complex it required special tables locked in the Pope's private library. But power, this absolute, breeds rebellion. When Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II, called the wonder of the world for his brilliance, openly challenged Rome's Easter calculations in 1234, it wasn't just a theological spat. By funding Sicilian and Arab astronomers to craft a rival calendar, Frederick struck at the Church's most vulnerable point, its monopoly on time's meaning. His court scholars proved that Rome's calculations had drifted by 8 days, meaning millions were celebrating Christ's resurrection on the wrong date. The implications were explosive. If the Church could err about Easter, what else might it be wrong about? The Vatican responded with fire and brimstone, excommunicating Frederick not once but 3 times. Yet the damage was done. Other rulers, smelling blood in the water, began hiring their own timekeepers. In Paris, King Louis IX quietly established an astronomical college outside church control, while in Castile, Alfonso X assembled Jewish, Christian, and Muslim scholars to create the Alphonsine tables, a celestial almanac so accurate it exposed flaws in the Gregorian calendar centuries before its reform. What made this medieval time war so pivotal was its battlefield, the human imagination. By breaking the Church's stranglehold on calendars, these rulers didn't just change how people marked days, they cracked open a door to questioning all received wisdom. When a farmer could consult a prince's star charts instead of a priest's homily, authority itself began to migrate from altar to throne. The Church's time monopoly didn't collapse overnight, but its invincibility had been punctured, proving even the heavens could be reinterpreted by those bold enough to look through their own telescopes. While Europe's monasteries debated the proper date for Easter, a scientific revolution was unfolding under the crescent moon. In the bustling observatories of Baghdad and Damascus, Muslim scholars weren't just observing the stars, they were redefining humanity's relationship with time itself. The astrolabe, once a crude Greek instrument, became under their hands a masterpiece of precision engineering, capable of calculating prayer times across continents with razor-thin accuracy. But this wasn't just about devotion, it was about dominion. When Caliph al-Ma'mun established the House of Wisdom in 830, he didn't just gather books, he assembled an intellectual army. Their mission, to forge a universal Islamic calendar so precise it could synchronize an empire stretching from Cordoba to Samarkand. The political stakes were astronomical. Sunni Abbasid rulers in Baghdad funded teams to track the lunar cycle, knowing their calendar's credibility shored up their claim as rightful successors to Muhammad. Meanwhile, Shia Fatimid rivals in Cairo secretly developed their own calculations, subtly shifting key dates to undermine Abbasid authority. A difference of mere hours in moon sightings could determine which empire declared Eid first, a celestial showdown where being wrong meant losing divine legitimacy. Court astronomers became rock stars of their age. The Persian genius al-Biruni alone calculated the solar year to within minutes of modern measurements while simultaneously proving Earth rotated on its axis. What made this conflict truly transformative was its unintended legacy. Muslim scholars, racing to outdo each other, invented algebra to solve orbital equations, built the first mechanical calendars, and even designed water clocks that adjusted automatically for seasonal time changes, technologies Europe wouldn't match for centuries. When Christian crusaders stormed into Toledo in 1085, they expected to find barbarians. Instead, they discovered libraries filled with astronomical tables so advanced they shattered medieval Europe's understanding of time. The bitter irony, these Islamic innovations born from sectarian rivalry would become the foundation for the very scientific revolution that eventually eclipsed the Muslim world's dominance. The same astronomical data that once settled arguments over Ramadan's start date would guide Columbus across the Atlantic, while Al-Khwarizmi's algorithms now power the smartphones that tell us when to pray. The lesson written in those star charts transcends empires. Time favors not those who conquer land, but those who dare to measure it. Genghis Khan's empire stretched from the Pacific to the Mediterranean, yet his most ingenious conquest wasn't of land, it was of time itself. While other rulers imposed their calendars by force, the Mongols did something radical. They let conquered peoples keep their own systems, weaving them into a tapestry of temporal traditions. Persian solar years coexisted with Chinese lunar cycles, Uyghur animal calendars with Tibetan astrological charts. This wasn't tolerance, it was strategy. By allowing subjects to mark time as they always had, the Mongols softened their rule, making taxes feel less like tribute and more like natural seasons turning. But the real stroke of genius came from the steppe's own tradition of the blue calendar, a fluid system where years were named after animals and months could stretch or shrink based on nomadic needs. Unlike rigid agricultural societies, the Mongols saw time as a river to be navigated, not dammed. When messengers raced across the empire, they didn't count days, they rode by horse sleeps, the distance a steed could travel before resting. This flexibility became the glue holding disparate cultures together, proving that timekeeping could be as adaptable as a composite bow. The cracks appeared when the empire fragmented. As Genghis's grandsons turned on each other, their once unified timekeeping splintered into rival systems. In Persia, Ilkhanate rulers adopted the Islamic calendar to legitimize their rule, while China's Yuan dynasty clung to the traditional lunisolar system. The most telling fracture came during New Year celebrations. What had been a single empire-wide festival now erupted on different dates across the realms. In 1262, when Kublai Khan declared the Yuan dynasty's New Year, his cousin Berke of the Golden Horde was already 2 months into the Islamic year. The symbolism was devastating. An empire that once moved as one now couldn't even agree on what year it was. Archaeologists have found poignant evidence of this temporal unraveling. In Karakoram's ruins, coins minted by rival khans show conflicting dates, while diplomatic letters argue over which calendar should govern treaty deadlines. Even the weather became contested when a harsh winter froze the Volga. Mongol factions blamed each other's misaligned calendars for failing to predict it. The lesson was clear: you could conquer the world, but if you lost control of time's narrative, you lost the empire itself. What makes the Mongols' downfall so haunting is how modern their struggle feels. Their empire didn't collapse from invasion or plague, but from something far subtler, a failure to synchronize. In our age of time zones and digital clocks, we've inherited their challenge: how to share a world where everyone experiences time differently. The Mongols proved that temporal harmony isn't just about counting days. It's about whose story gets to shape them. The ticking of gears replaced celestial cycles as Europe's new heartbeat during the Renaissance. But this revolution wasn't peaceful, it was a battle royale of brass and pendulum. In Venice, the Torre dell'Orologio didn't just tell time. It performed mechanical theater with bronze giants striking the hours. while Florence's Palazzo Vecchio clock tower displayed the zodiac as a cosmic declaration of Medici power. These weren't public services, they were propaganda in motion, proving a city's sophistication through the precision of its gears. Yet beneath this competition lurked a darker truth. Clocks became the ultimate tool for social control. When German princes installed town clocks in the 1500s, they didn't just standardize work hours, they imposed fines for tardiness, turning time into a currency extracted from the poor. In England, parish clocks enforced mandatory prayer sessions, their chimes drowning out dissenting preachers. The most insidious innovation came from Dutch textile mills, where workers' wages were docked by the minute for lateness, a practice that spread like wildfire across industrializing Europe. The stakes turned global when Spain and Portugal signed the Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494. While history remembers it for dividing continents, the real conflict was temporal. Portugal's navigators used solar noon calculations from Saga's observatory, while Spain's captains followed Toledo time, a discrepancy that placed their territorial claims nearly 4 degrees apart. For decades, rival ships carried conflicting hourglasses calibrated to their homeland standards, leading to violent clashes when both nations claimed the same sunrise over newly discovered islands. What made this era so transformative was its unintended consequence, the birth of modern capitalism. As merchant ships required precise logs to calculate longitude, as factories demanded synchronized shifts, time ceased to be a natural rhythm and became a commodity, one that could be bought, sold, and weaponized. The clock towers that once symbolized civic pride now cast long shadows over daily life, their hands moving to the rhythm of power rather than the cosmos. And as we'll see next, this mechanization of time would soon face a rebellion that echoes to this day. When Pope Gregory XIII unveiled his new calendar in 1582, the faithful didn't just lose 10 days, they lost their grip on reality itself. Overnight, October 4th became October 15th across Catholic Europe, with vanished days sparking riots as peasants demanded their missing wages and saints' feast days evaporated mid-celebration. But the real shockwave wasn't the skip dates, it was the silent war that followed. Protestant rulers saw the Gregorian reform not as scientific progress, but as a Trojan horse. By rejecting the papal decree, Queen Elizabeth I of England and Lutheran princes across Germany drew a line in the sands of time. Their defiance turned clocks into political manifestos. The chaos that unfolded would baffle modern travelers. A merchant sailing from Catholic Lisbon to Protestant London in 1583 could leave on Monday morning and arrive the previous Sunday, his ship crossing not just sea lanes but temporal fault lines. Diplomatic correspondence between Spain and Sweden required dual dating for 2 centuries, with treaties bearing 2 signatures, one for each timeline. Even astronomy became fractured. When Tycho Brahe observed a supernova from his Danish observatory, his Catholic counterparts initially dismissed it because their calendars placed the event in different years. Beneath this absurdity lurked a deadly serious power struggle. The Vatican's reform corrected a mere 11 minutes of annual drift, but its implications were seismic. By fixing Easter's date, Gregory didn't just realign the calendar, he reasserted Rome's right to dictate cosmic truth. Protestant resistance often took bizarre forms. When Prussia finally adopted the Gregorian calendar in 1610, they did so without papal permission, as if stealing the Vatican's homework. Meanwhile, Orthodox Russia held out until 1918, their refusal creating surreal scenarios where Tolstoy's characters celebrated Christmas weeks after their European counterparts. The most revealing battleground was colonial America. Puritan Boston clung to the Julian calendar until 1752, their stubbornness turning New England into a temporal island where spring arrived on paper weeks before it graced the frozen fields. When the switch finally came, mobs filled Boston streets chanting, "Give us back our 11 days," a cry that had nothing to do with astronomy and everything to do with who controlled life's rhythms. What began as a celestial correction became history's longest-running culture war, proving that time isn't measured in days, but in the stories we wrap around them. The Gregorian coup didn't just change how we mark years, it exposed how profoundly human power depends on controlling the very fabric of when we live. The open sea has no landmarks, just endless horizons where a single degree of miscalculation could send ships smashing into unseen coasts. By 1714, Britain's navy had suffered catastrophic losses not to enemy cannons but to faulty navigation. The problem wasn't maps or stars, it was time itself. Sailors could measure latitude by the sun's height, but longitude required knowing exactly what time it was back home. Without this, entire fleets wandered blindly, their wooden hulls splitting on reefs that shouldn't have been there. When Admiral Sir Cloudesley Shovel's squadron wrecked off the Scilly Isles in 1707, drowning 2,000 men due to a longitude error, Parliament finally acted. The Longitude Prize offered £20,000, equivalent to millions today, for anyone who could solve this deadly puzzle. What made this competition so explosive was how it transformed timekeeping from science into espionage. John Harrison, a self-taught Yorkshire clockmaker, spent decades perfecting his marine chronometer's devices so precise they lost mere seconds over months at sea. His H4 timekeeper, small enough to fit in a captain's palm, was a masterpiece of miniature engineering, but Harrison wasn't just battling physics, he was dodging French agents sent to steal his blueprints. Rival nations understood the stakes. Whoever controlled accurate timekeeping controlled the world's trade routes. Spanish spies infiltrated Greenwich Observatory, while Dutch merchants paid bribes for glimpses of Harrison's workshop. Even Britain's own board of longitude sabotaged Harrison's claims, packed with astronomers who believed the answer lay in lunar charts rather than clocks. The most fascinating twist came from an unexpected quarter: piracy. Caribbean buccaneers, realizing their survival depended on precise navigation, became unlikely patrons of chronometer research. Blackbeard's quartermaster reportedly carried a stolen French marine clock, while Tortuga's smugglers paid top gold for any device that could outpace the Royal Navy's navigators. Time wasn't just a tool for empire, it was the ultimate treasure, more valuable than chests of doubloons. Harrison's eventual victory in 1773 didn't just earn him a partial prize Parliament stiffed him for years. It triggered an arms race of precision engineering that would define the Industrial Revolution. Chronometer workshops became fortresses, their windows barred against prying eyes, while naval officers carried their timekeepers in locked boxes with armed guards. The lesson was clear. In an age of global empires, the true power didn't lie in controlling territory, but in controlling the very seconds that guided ships across it. And as we'll see next, this race for precision would soon escape the oceans altogether, reshaping timekeeping in ways no one could predict. When the guillotine blade fell on Louis XVI in 1793, France didn't just execute a king, it severed ties with history itself. The revolutionaries knew true change required more than new laws. It demanded a new rhythm of life, so they took aim at the most invisible yet powerful force shaping society: the calendar. Out went Sunday masses and saints' days, replaced by a radical decimal system where weeks stretched to 10 days and months were renamed after weather and harvests. Vendémiaire, Brumaire, Frimaire, these weren't just labels but declarations of war against the past, each name scrubbed clean of religious or royal association. The architects of this new time weren't merely bureaucrats, they were social engineers wielding mathematics like a scalpel. Days were divided into 10 hours, each hour into 100 decimal minutes, creating a dizzying symmetry that mirrored the Republic's obsession with reason. Clocks across Paris were retrofitted with dual faces, their familiar 12-hour dials now accompanied by strange decimal counterparts ticking at an alien pace. Workers suddenly found their long-cherished day of rest Sunday replaced by décade, a 10th-day break that disrupted centuries of tradition. The message was unmistakable. Even the flow of time must bow to revolutionary ideals. But the human cost of this experiment soon became apparent. Factory workers, already exhausted by 6-day weeks under the old system, now faced 9 straight days of labor before respite. Peasants discovered their traditional harvest festivals no longer aligned with the seasons, as the new calendar's fixed months drifted from agricultural realities. Most damning of all was the backlash from rural France, where communities secretly maintained the Gregorian calendar for baptisms and marriages, whispering the forbidden names of January and December like political dissidents sharing underground literature. The calendar's fatal flaw wasn't mathematical, it was psychological. By erasing Sunday, the revolutionaries had unwittingly destroyed a cultural anchor, the weekly pause that structured family gatherings, market days, and spiritual reflection. When Napoleon finally abolished the revolutionary calendar in 1806, he wasn't just conceding to practicality, he was acknowledging something profound about human nature. People will tolerate changes to taxes or borders, but alter how they experience time itself, and you risk unraveling the very fabric of society. What makes this failed experiment so illuminating is what it reveals about time's dual nature. The revolutionary calendar succeeded brilliantly as a political statement. It truly did create a year zero. But as a lived experience, it proved that timekeeping isn't just about counting days. It's about the stories we tell ourselves between sunrise and sunset, the rhythms that make a culture feel like home. France's decimal days now exist only in history books, but their ghost lingers in every modern attempt to standardize time across borders, a cautionary tale about the limits of rationality in the face of human tradition. Before railroads conquered continents, time was as local as the village church bell. Farmers set their clocks by the sun's highest point overhead, meaning noon in Boston arrived almost half an hour earlier than in New York. This didn't matter when travel meant horse-drawn carriages, but when steam engines began hurtling passengers across states at 60 miles an hour, chaos ensued. Railroad stations in the 1870s often displayed multiple clocks, each showing a different local time for connecting lines. Passengers missed trains by minutes, freight shipments collided, and engineers near state borders faced the absurd task of resetting their pocket watches every few miles. The solution emerged not from astronomers or politicians, but from railroad barons. In 1883, William F. Allen, a railroad engineer turned time czar, proposed slicing North America into 4 uniform time zones. His plan was ruthless in its simplicity. Every clock within a zone would now tick in lockstep, regardless of the sun's position. On November 18th at noon, dubbed the Day of Two Noons, telegraph wires carried synchronized time signals across the continent. Clocks in major cities were physically halted or advanced to match the new standard, some gaining 25 minutes instantly, others losing over half an hour. But not everyone surrendered gracefully. Detroit held out for decades, keeping its clocks 28 minutes behind New York until 1905. In Indianapolis, a mob smashed the railroad's standardized clock, reinstalling the town's old sundial with patriotic fervor. Religious leaders denounced the change as man's arrogance against God's time. while farmers protested that their cows wouldn't adapt to milking scheduled by railroad timetables rather than sunrise. The resistance wasn't just sentimental, it was economic. Local jewelers who made fortunes repairing inconsistent clocks suddenly found their services obsolete, while almanac publishers faced ruin as their celestial tables became irrelevant. The most fascinating rebellion came from the sea. Maritime vessels still navigating by the stars refused to acknowledge what they called railroad time until well into the 20th century. This created surreal scenarios where coastal towns operated on two parallel timelines, one for trains, another for tides. In Savannah, Georgia, the City Hall clock tower famously displayed 2-minute hands, one pointing to railroad time, the other to local solar time, a physical manifestation of a culture torn between tradition and progress. What made this temporal revolution so transformative was its invisible grip on daily life. Factory whistles now signaled shifts not by daylight but by corporate schedules. School bells rang at precisely 8:15, not when the frost melts from the pasture. Even meal times became standardized with the invention of lunch hour, cementing time's new role as an instrument of social control. The railroads didn't just transport goods, they delivered an entirely new rhythm of existence. One where humanity's age-old dance with the sun was replaced by the cold precision of synchronized pocket watches. And as we'll see next, this surrender to artificial time would soon accelerate beyond anything the railroad tycoons could have imagined. The concept seems simple enough: shift clocks forward in spring, back in fall, and suddenly everyone enjoys more evening sunlight. But when Germany first implemented daylight saving time in 1916 as a wartime measure to conserve coal, they unleashed a temporal controversy that would outlast the Kaiser's empire. The policy's inventor, British builder William Willett, had envisioned it as a health boon. His 1907 pamphlet argued that earlier daylight would reduce the waste of daylight and encourage outdoor exercise. What he couldn't predict was how this well-intentioned adjustment would become a century-long tug of war over power, productivity, and human biology. Farmers became the first rebels. Dairy hands in Vermont found cows unimpressed by legislative decrees, their udders stubbornly adhering to solar time rather than politicians' whims. Harvest crews in Kansas discovered their overtime pay shrinking as saved daylight pushed sunset later into unpaid hours. Rural legislators across America fought back with God's time bills, while Soviet Russia briefly adopted, then abandoned daylight saving after realizing wheat couldn't be harvested by decree. The irony was thick enough to cut with a scythe. The agricultural economy that supposedly needed more working daylight rejected the change most violently. Urban factories and department stores, however, saw gold in those stolen evening hours. Pittsburgh steel mills reported productivity spikes with laborers commuting in sunlight, while London's West End theaters reveled in post-work crowds lingering under extended daylight. The real masterstroke came from American golf courses. Lobbyists proved extra evening sunlight increased greens fees by 30%, making daylight saving a pet cause for country clubs coast to coast. This urban-rural divide turned timekeeping into a cultural battleground, with city slickers mocking hayseed clocks and farmers accusing metropolitans of stealing God's sunshine. Governments soon weaponized these clock changes for darker purposes. During World War II, America implemented year-round daylight saving, dubbed wartime, ostensibly to save fuel, but also to maximize shift work in defense plants. In Chile, Augusto Pinochet permanently shifted clocks forward in 1973, not for energy savings, but to differentiate his regime from the previous administration's timekeeping. Even the oil crisis of the 1970s became a temporal playground. The U.S. extended daylight saving for 10 months, while Britain experimented with keeping clocks 2 hours ahead in something called British Standard Time, only to abandon it after pre-dawn schoolchildren started getting hit by cars in the pitch-black mornings. Modern research reveals the most insidious effect isn't economic, it's biological. When scientists studied time zone borders, they found heart attack rates spiked 24% in the week after Spring's lost hour, while car accidents jumped 6% from sleep-deprived drivers. The state of Indiana, split between 2 time zones, became an accidental laboratory proving these costs. Counties observing daylight saving saw higher energy bills from extra air conditioning use, debunking the original conservation rationale. Yet despite overwhelming evidence that clock switching harms health and saves negligible energy, the practice persists for one simple reason: tradition's inertia is stronger than reason's momentum. What began as a builder's pet project now dictates the daily rhythms of over 1 billion people. The daylight saving debate isn't really about sunlight or savings. It's about who gets to decide when society wakes, works, and winds down. From dairy farmers to dictators, everyone who ever tried to control time learned the same hard lesson. You can move the hands on a clock, but human nature ticks to its own stubborn rhythm. The ticking of cesium atoms inside atomic clocks doesn't just measure time, it redefines reality itself. These devices, accurate to within 1 second over millions of years, didn't merely improve precision, they shattered humanity's centuries-old relationship with the cosmos. No longer bound by the wobble of Earth's rotation or the phases of the moon, we now mark seconds by the unfathomably consistent vibrations of atoms. 9,192,631,770 oscillations of a cesium atom for each tick. But this quantum leap in accuracy came with an ironic twist. The more perfect our timekeeping became, the more fragile our systems grew. Take GPS, the invisible infrastructure underpinning modern life. Each satellite in that constellation carries multiple atomic clocks, and their timing must be precise to within 40 nanoseconds, about the time it takes light to travel 12 meters. A discrepancy of just 1 microsecond would throw navigation off by 300 meters, sending self-driving cars into ditches and missile guidance systems catastrophically off course. This vulnerability turned timekeeping into a battlefield. When Russian forces jammed GPS signals during their invasion of Ukraine, they weren't just disrupting maps, they were attacking the temporal foundation of Western military logistics. The Pentagon's response: accelerate deployment of ultra-secure, jamming-proof atomic clocks so precise they could maintain GPS accuracy even if satellites went dark. The stakes escalate beneath our feet. Financial markets now timestamp trades in picoseconds, trillionths of a second, making atomic clocks essential for detecting fraud in high-frequency trading. During the 2010 flash crash, when Wall Street briefly lost $1 trillion in minutes, investigators traced the chaos to a single algorithm operating microseconds faster than competitors. In response, stock exchanges installed atomic clocks to create an unbreakable timeline of transactions, transforming time into a forensic tool. Yet the most startling development is how this technology resurrected ancient power struggles in digital disguise. China's Beidou satellite system uses rubidium atomic clocks so advanced they've reportedly surpassed American GPS in accuracy. A temporal arms race with echoes of medieval emperors competing over eclipse predictions. Meanwhile, Switzerland guards its master atomic clocks like nuclear secrets, knowing their precision underpins the reliability of every Swiss-made watch. Even North Korea, despite crippling sanctions, somehow acquired atomic clock technology, proving that in the 21st century, controlling time isn't just about power, it's about survival. The lesson written in those silent, hyper-accurate atoms is clear. Humanity's quest to master time didn't end with sundials or steam engines. It merely evolved into a new arena where milliseconds decide empires, and the rulers of tomorrow will be those who command the quantum heartbeat of the universe itself. The servers humming beneath Silicon Valley don't just process data, they dictate the tempo of modern life. Every tweet timestamp, every blockchain transaction, every algorithmic feed is a skirmish in the digital time wars, where tech giants battle not for territory but for temporal dominance. Consider the absurd precision of Google's Spanner database, which synchronizes transactions across continents using atomic clocks and GPS to resolve conflicts down to the nanosecond. When you send money or post a photo, you're not just interacting with code, you're submitting to an invisible temporal regime where being milliseconds out of sync could crash financial markets or fracture metaverse identities. Social media platforms weaponize this control with terrifying subtlety. Instagram's algorithm doesn't just show you content, it warps your sense of time itself. By reshuffling posts out of chronological order, it creates the illusion that a 3-day-old viral clip is happening now, while burying actual real-time updates from friends. TikTok takes this further, its For You page erasing all temporal context entirely. Videos from weeks ago reappear as if freshly posted, trapping users in an endless present where novelty never fades. The psychological effect is profound. Studies show heavy social media users increasingly struggle to recall whether events happened yesterday or last month, their internal clocks hijacked by platforms that profit from timeless engagement. Meanwhile, blockchain networks wage their own temporal civil war. Bitcoin's proof-of-work system treats time as a decentralized consensus. Miners vote with their processing power to agree on transaction order. But when Ethereum switched to proof of stake, it introduced slots and epochs, a rhythmic cadence more reminiscent of medieval church bells than digital currency. The result, a schism where crypto purists accuse Ethereum of recreating the very centralized timekeeping they sought to escape. Even time stamps become political. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, anonymous coders altered blockchain timestamps to encode protest messages in plain sight, turning transaction logs into temporal graffiti. The most revealing battlefront is cloud computing. When Amazon Web Services suffered an outage in 2021, domino effects crippled everything from airline schedules to hospital records, not because data was lost, but because systems couldn't agree on what time it was. Microsoft Azure now offers chronosync services guaranteeing timestamp consistency across servers, while Google's True Time API openly admits its clocks might drift up to 7 milliseconds, forcing developers to code around temporal uncertainty. These aren't technical quirks, they're digital echoes of ancient kings resetting calendars to assert control. What makes this modern time war so insidious is its invisibility. We willingly strap smartwatches to our wrists that sync with corporate servers, letting Silicon Valley track our sleep cycles, workout durations, even bathroom breaks. The same companies that lobby against daylight saving time citing health impacts have no qualms profiting from our distorted perception of endless scrolling. The lesson is clear, whether chiseled on Babylonian tablets or encoded in blockchain ledgers, humanity's oldest power struggle continues. The clocks may be atomic now, but the game remains the same. Whoever controls time controls reality. And in our digital age, that control has never been more complete or more dangerous. The leap second might sound like a minor technical tweak, but this tiny adjustment has sparked one of the fiercest scientific debates of our era. Every few years, when Earth's slowing rotation drifts out of sync with our hyper-accurate atomic clocks, timekeepers insert a single extra second to keep them aligned. It's a modern echo of ancient priests adding days to lunar calendars, except now, the stakes involve crashing stock markets and misaligned satellites. Financial systems operate on a razor's edge where microseconds determine fortunes. When the last leap second was added in 2016, major tech firms reported systems glitches that rippled across global markets. Australia's stock exchange shut down for nearly an hour while Reddit's servers crashed under timestamp confusion. The problem isn't the extra second itself, it's how computers interpret it. Many systems aren't programmed to handle time going from 23:59:59 to 23:59:60 before midnight, creating cascading errors when transactions appear to happen out of time. Aerospace engineers face even deadlier consequences. GPS satellites rely on nanosecond precision. A 1-second discrepancy could throw navigation off by 300,000 meters. During the 2012 leap second, Qantas Airlines had to delay flights over fears their navigation systems might glitch midair. Meanwhile, astronomers tracking deep space probes like Voyager calculate trajectories using atomic time. A mismatch with Earth's rotation could mean missing a planetary flyby by kilometers after a decade-long journey. Yet abolishing the leap second carries its own risks. Over centuries, atomic clocks would drift further from solar time until noon no longer aligns with the sun's highest point. It's the same dilemma faced by Julius Caesar's calendar reformers, just stretched across millennia. Some propose letting the gap grow until a full leap hour is needed centuries from now, while others suggest letting digital and celestial time permanently diverge, creating parallel timelines for machines and humans. This debate reveals something profound about our relationship with time. Ancient kings manipulated calendars to control harvests and taxes. Today's rulers are Silicon Valley engineers and central bankers fighting over who defines a second. The leap second controversy isn't just about atomic physics. It's the latest front in humanity's eternal war to reconcile the rhythms of nature with our hunger for perfect precision. And like all great time wars before it, there are no easy answers. Only ticking clocks counting down to the next inevitable collision between technology and the cosmos. China's vast landscape stretches across what would naturally span 5 time zones, yet the entire nation ticks to a single official clock, Beijing time. This isn't just administrative convenience, it's a deliberate act of temporal unification. In Xinjiang, the westernmost region, the sun may not rise until 10 in the morning during winter months, forcing Uyghur farmers to start their days in darkness while government offices follow the capital's schedule. The message is as clear as it was in imperial dynasties. All rhythms of life, from school bells to stock markets, must beat in sync with centralized power. North Korea took this logic even further when they created Pyongyang time in 2015, rolling clocks back 30 minutes to break from the Japanese-imposed time zone used during occupation. State media framed it as reclaiming our stolen chronology, but the real purpose was symbolic, another way to isolate citizens from foreign influences. Border towns suddenly operated on different schedules than their South Korean neighbors, making cross-border communication just that much harder. Even train schedules were altered to emphasize the divide, turning something as mundane as a timetable into a propaganda tool. Venezuela's time zone experiment reveals how arbitrary these decisions can be. In 2016, President Maduro shifted clocks forward 30 minutes, claiming it would save electricity. But economists noted the change conveniently pushed opposition protests into nighttime hours when media coverage dwindled. Meanwhile, Spain's continued use of Central European time, despite geographically belonging with Portugal in Western Europe, stems from Franco's wartime alignment with Nazi Germany, a temporal legacy still shaping Spanish work culture's notoriously late dinners. The most aggressive modern time war might be Russia's. By maintaining 11 time zones, the most of any nation, the Kremlin projects an image of unimaginable vastness. Yet these zones follow political more than geographical logic, with annexed Crimea switching to Moscow time overnight in 2014. Satellite images show the actual solar noon differing by over 2 hours from official time in some Siberian towns, proving time zones aren't about sunlight, they're about sovereignty. What makes these modern manipulations so potent is their subtlety. Unlike ancient kings erasing years from records, today's rulers don't need to alter history, they simply redefine what now means. A time zone change can erase cultural rhythms centuries old, silence dissent by shifting protest windows, or rebrand occupation as unification. The sundials may be gone, but the battle they represented continues only now. It's fought with atomic clocks and international datelines instead of solstice markers and lunar observations. The ticking of future time won't come from cesium atoms, but from the eerie ballet of electrons dancing between energy levels. Quantum clocks, harnessing the oscillations of trapped ions or strontium atoms cooled to near absolute zero, promise accuracy so staggering they'd lose less than a second over the entire age of the universe. But this isn't just scientific progress, it's the dawn of a new power struggle. Whoever masters these devices won't just tell time, they'll define it for the rest of us. Private corporations are already jostling for supremacy. Google's Quantum AI Lab has quietly filed patents for distributed time synchronization systems that could override traditional GPS signals. Meanwhile, Amazon Web Services offers precision time as a service, leasing atomic clock accuracy to Wall Street firms for microseconds before competitors see the same data. The dystopian potential is obvious. Imagine a world where tech giants auction access to the most accurate timestamps, creating a temporal caste system where milliseconds determine market winners and losers. Governments aren't sitting idle. China's Beidou 3 satellites now carry rubidium clocks accurate to 1 second every 3 million years, while the U.S. Navy's latest warships house portable quantum clocks resistant to GPS jamming. The European Union's Galileo system boasts hydrogen maser clocks so stable they're redefining the very length of a second. This arms race has chilling precedents. In 2022, Russian hackers targeted Switzerland's Meta's Timekeeping lab, not for classified data, but to subtly skew the master clocks that sync European financial transactions. The most unsettling frontier lies in quantum entanglement, where pairs of atoms remain mysteriously linked across distances. Scientists have already demonstrated entangled clocks that stay synchronized even when separated by kilometers, hinting at a future where timekeeping could bypass traditional infrastructure entirely. Military planners salivate at the prospect of drone swarms coordinating via unhackable quantum time, while crypto enthusiasts dream of blockchain networks secured by entanglement's immutable timestamps. Yet beneath these technological marvels lurks a philosophical crisis. For millennia, humanity shared time as a commons, first through sundials, later via radio broadcast time signals. But quantum precision threatens to fracture this unity. When corporations and superpowers each operate their own hyper-accurate time networks, who decides which one is right? We're barreling toward a world with competing temporal realities, where your smartphone, your power grid, and your self-driving car might all follow subtly different master clocks. The ancient kings fought over calendars and solstices, but their modern successors wield something far more potent: the ability to reshape time itself at the quantum level. History's greatest conquerors understood a truth we often overlook: clocks and calendars are never neutral. They're battlegrounds where power is won or lost not through force, but through the quiet rewriting of reality itself. Take the humble time zone. It seems like simple geography, but when colonial empires imposed Greenwich Mean Time across continents in the 19th century, they weren't just synchronizing train schedules. They were erasing indigenous ways of marking time, lunar cycles tied to harvest festivals, star positions that guided ocean navigators for millennia. The message was clear: to control a people's clocks is to control their connection to land, tradition, and even the divine. Modern corporations wield this same power with terrifying sophistication. When a social media platform manipulates its algorithm to make content appear instant, even when it's days old, they're not just optimizing engagement, they're reshaping our perception of now. Factory workers in Amazon warehouses report their breaks are timed down to the second by wristbands that vibrate when their allotted minutes expire, turning human rest into another logistical variable. Even fitness trackers gamify our biological rhythms, rewarding us for sleeping and moving on Silicon Valley's schedule rather than our body's natural cues. The mechanisms may be digital, but the goal echoes ancient emperors. Make the populace internalize your timeline until it feels like second nature, yet resistance persists. In Morocco, farmers still plant by the traditional Amazigh calendar despite official Gregorian dates, their almond blossoms blooming according to ancestral rhythms rather than government paperwork. Bitcoin miners deliberately use proof of work, an energy-intensive process, because its decentralized timestamping can't be altered by any central authority. These aren't just cultural quirks, they're acts of temporal defiance, proving that no system, no matter HOW Chinese letter, can fully erase humanity's stubborn insistence on marking time our own way. The lesson buried in these conflicts is timeless. Whoever dictates the rhythm of days holds the keys to power. Kings once did it with solstice monuments and falsified eclipse records. Today's rulers, whether algorithms, governments, or corporate boards, do it with atomic clocks and dopamine-triggered notifications, but the stakes remain unchanged. When we surrender our sense of time, we surrender something far more precious: the right to decide what moments matter and why. The clocks will keep ticking. The question is, whose time are they really counting? The pharaohs built pyramids to cheat death, and emperors waged wars over calendars, but the most profound time war has always been the one waged inside our own minds. Modern life bombards us with distractions designed to fracture our attention, turning days into a blur of notifications and half-finished tasks. Yet buried beneath this chaos lies an ancient truth: how we structure our hours determines not just what we accomplish, but who we become. The same principles that once guided kings to align their reigns with solstices can help us reclaim sovereignty over our schedules today. Take circadian rhythms, nature's original timekeeping system. Our ancestors rose with the sun and slept under starlight, their bodies perfectly synchronized with Earth's rotation. Modern research confirms what these cultures knew instinctively. Working with our biological clocks boosts focus, creativity, and even immunity. Night owls, forcing themselves into pre-dawn productivity, mimic medieval monks defying seasonal darkness with candlelit vigils. Both pay the price in exhaustion. The solution isn't rigid early rising, but tuning our schedules to personal energy peaks, whether that means writing at midnight like Victor Hugo or coding at sunrise like ancient astronomers tracking Venus. Time blocking transforms this insight into action. Just as Babylonian priests divided the night into watches for celestial observations, we can partition our days into themed segments: deep work, learning, restoration, guarding each like a palace guard protecting the royal treasury. The technique's power lies in its simplicity. When a Spanish conquistador scheduled his day into prayer, administration, and correspondence, he wasn't just organizing tasks, he was constructing a hierarchy of what mattered most. Today's entrepreneurs do the same, batching emails into designated slots to prevent digital intrusions from colonizing mental space like invasive empires. The real breakthrough comes when these methods intersect. Imagine structuring your week like a medieval abbey's herarium, aligning intense cognitive work with peak alertness, typically mid-morning for most, saving routine tasks for the post-lunch dip, and reserving evenings for reflection, a modern Vespers. Silicon Valley CEOs and Renaissance polymaths alike grasped this. Leonardo da Vinci's fragmented sleep cycles and Winston Churchill's afternoon naps weren't eccentricities, but strategic manipulations of biology's rhythms. Yet true time mastery demands more than efficiency. It requires redefining what's worthy of our limited days. The Mayans built observatories not just to track time, but to identify auspicious moments for meaningful action. Similarly, we might audit our schedules like archaeologists sifting through midden heaps, discarding digital trivia to preserve hours for what echoes through years. A cancelled meeting becomes found time for learning, a commute transforms into an audio university, and the wasted hour of waiting becomes fertile ground for ideas that outlast empires. The irony is delicious. After centuries of rulers manipulating calendars to control populations, the ultimate rebellion is personal, a single human consciously designing their days. No atomic clock nor algorithm can dictate when we create, connect, or rest unless we surrender that power. The sundials may have become smartwatches, but the essential question remains: will you let time flow through you like a serf tending royal fields, or wield it like a king building cathedrals to outlast the stars? The algorithms scrolling through your phone right now aren't just serving content, they're silently reshaping your perception of time itself. Social media platforms engineer endless scroll to blur hours into minutes, while streaming services autoplay episodes to override natural stopping points. This isn't accidental design, it's temporal exploitation, turning human attention into a commodity measured in screen time metrics and quarterly earnings reports. The ancient kings who altered calendars to extend their reigns would marvel at modern tech giants who have achieved something far more insidious. They've made us complicit in our own distraction, willingly surrendering our most finite resource, time, one notification at a time. Consider the precedent set by historical timekeeping reforms. When nations adopted standardized time zones in the 19th century, it wasn't just about train schedules. It was a collective agreement that time should serve public good, not private interests. Today's unregulated digital timekeepers operate with no such accountability. Ride-share apps manipulate drivers' clocks to hide surge pricing patterns. Food delivery algorithms penalize workers for delays caused by traffic lights they can't control. And productivity software gamifies work hours into competitions that erode healthy boundaries. These aren't bugs in the system. They're features of an attention economy that treats time as a resource to extract rather than a dimension to honor. The medical community has sounded alarms about the physiological toll. Studies show constant timestamp manipulation, like endlessly shifting work schedules or algorithmically disrupted sleep cycles, triggers stress responses comparable to chronic jet lag. Nurses working rotating hospital shifts demonstrate cognitive impairment equivalent to a blood alcohol level of 0.05, while students subjected to randomized app notifications develop attention spans shorter than goldfish. These aren't personal failures, they're symptoms of systems that prioritize engagement metrics over human cadence. Some governments are pushing back. The European Union's right to disconnect laws fine companies for after-hours emails, echoing medieval sundial ordinances that prohibited night work by candlelight. Japan now mandates premium Fridays, encouraging early departures, a modern twist on ancient harvest festivals that honored seasonal rest. Even Silicon Valley's architects are rebelling. Former tech executives lobby for humane design standards that would ban infinite scroll and require platforms to display cumulative daily usage in bold red digits like cigarette warnings. The most promising resistance comes from an unexpected quarter: labor movements. German auto workers now negotiate time sovereignty clauses, letting them adjust shifts around circadian rhythms, while Australian unions demand transparency in the algorithms that allocate gig economy hours. These efforts share DNA with 13th century stonemason guilds that fought for daylight-only work hours, proving some battles must be refought each technological era. What's needed now isn't just individual time management tips, but a new Geneva Convention for temporal ethics. Should atomic clock data be a public utility like clean water? Do corporations have the right to patent timestamp algorithms that manipulate perception? Can we create digital time sanctuaries, spaces where notifications can't reach, like modern versions of medieval cloisters? The answers will determine whether 21st century timekeeping becomes another tool of control or finally fulfills humanity's oldest longing: to live in harmony with time's true rhythm rather than as prisoners of someone else's clock. From sundials to atomic clocks, the struggle to control time has never been neutral. It's always been about who gets to write the story of our lives. The rival kings of old understood this intimately. When Julius Caesar reset the Roman calendar, when the Zhou dynasty erased dissenting astronomers from history, when medieval popes excommunicated emperors over Easter calculations, they weren't just adjusting numbers. They were crafting reality itself, weaving their reigns into the very fabric of days and seasons. Today, as quantum clocks tick toward unimaginable precision, we face the same pivotal question those rulers grappled with: will time be a tool of liberation or control? The stakes are higher now than ever. Ancient kings manipulated calendars, but their reach was limited by horse speed and parchment. Modern systems, algorithmic timelines, geosynchronous satellites, blockchain timestamps operate at scales those monarchs couldn't fathom. A single tech firm's decision to alter notification protocols can hijack millions of attention spans simultaneously. Governments tweaking time zones can erase cultural rhythms overnight. Even our language reflects this shift. We no longer tell time passively, we manage it aggressively, as if hours were subordinates to be disciplined. Yet there's hope in history's quieter lessons. For every pharaoh claiming to command the Nile's floods, there were farmers tracking moonshadows on palm fronds. For every railroad baron standardizing continents, there were communities preserving tide-based fishing schedules. These parallel systems reveal an enduring truth: timekeeping is most humane when it serves rather than subjugates lived experience. The Maya long count calendar didn't just track epochs, it wove human lives into cosmic cycles, a stark contrast to today's productivity apps slicing days into commodified minutes. As quantum entanglement and AI redefine temporal precision, we stand at a crossroads. Will we replicate past mistakes, letting atomic clocks become tools of surveillance capitalism and geopolitical one-upmanship? Or might we finally learn from history's bloodiest time wars that no single entity should ever monopolize humanity's relationship with time? The answer lies in our daily choices. Every time we silence notifications to watch a sunset, every time we reject hustle culture's tyranny of urgency, we reclaim a fragment of sovereignty. The rival kings of history left us pyramids and observatories, but their greatest legacy is the warning etched in their failures. time bends to no one's will indefinitely. As you close this video and glance at your clock, remember, you're not just checking the hour, you're stepping into an ancient battlefield where every moment is both a gift and a vote for what kind of temporal world we'll build next. The next era of timekeeping won't be written in star charts or silicon. It'll be written in the choices we make, one conscious breath at a